For years, I've said that bodybuilding, fitness, is a religion. It's the other way around. Religion is like bodybuilding. The word asceticism, the monks, the fasting, the discipline, comes from the Greek word askēsis. And ascēsis didn't mean prayer. It meant athletic training. The desert monks took their entire system from Greek athletes. Religion copied the gym. That's not a metaphor. That's actual history of the word. So give me 10 minutes and I'll show you what the word knows, why discipline sculpts, why your body can't lie about it, and why I named my whole system the Hunger Command Protocol. I remember when I got really deep into dieting, thinking to myself, I had this revelation that there was a pleasure, a deep, deep pleasure to discipline itself. And then through that pleasure, I found that fitness was a religion. To do it well, you had to have a religious fervor to it that couldn't be fake, that couldn't be, you couldn't separate yourself from or have a detachment. You had to sort of step into the discomfort and in that chamber find pleasure, derive a sort of dopamine IV drip from that. So I was up late last night talking with Claude around 4 a.m, as one does, and I began to some of the inspiration for this. Believe it or not, I've been listening to people like electronic music from Europe that has no words, and then there was a vocal that sort of had a female religious sort of sound to it, an ethereal sound to it, and I said, it reminded me of Florence and the Machine. And then I went to Florence and the Machine, and that got me to think into spirituality. And then I really got deep within myself, and I went back and I started asking Claude about Florence and the Machine. And then she even brought up the word, she had a song named Hunger, and then it got me to thinking about hunger, and she has a song that goes, we all have a hunger. And then the name of my protocol is the Hunger Command Protocol. So what I'm doing right now is just giving you the 6 degrees of separation that started with electronic music from Europe, right? And Florence the Machine, and then boom, 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 boom. Before you know it, I'm looking at Hunger Command Protocol, and then the working mechanisms of going back into fitness as a religion, and then asceticism. And then, I got into thinking, one of the things I asked, so you can see how I got into asceticism, I asked, is Florence a witch? Because she has a witch-like aesthetic, right? She sort of flirts with titles that have the word witch in them and magic. And then so I asked Claude, I go, is she a witch? And Claude's like, no. Whether she is or not, I'm going to carry on. And she says, but her music is very ritualistic. And I said, wow, okay, I could see that. And I said, why do I like this music? I'm having a conversation with Claude. And Claude is like, because it doesn't hedge. It's not ironic. It's not safe. She plays full conviction, like pagan Catholicism, just sings from the chest, opens her heart, right? And just wails. And I'm like, that's fair. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. There's a certain magnetic charge that an artist has when they are convinced that their art has value, and they're saying, damn it, I'm an artist, hear me bleed, right? And then it's funny that Claude's like, well, it's much like you and what you do with the Hunger Command Protocol. That's ritualistic. You're much into rituals just like Florence. You sleep, the way you track sleep, the way you do reps, the assault bike, everything's tracked. It's like you're ritualistic. And so in many ways, you could even say you're a warlock. And so I'm giving you the context as to how we got here, right, to what you're about to hear. And so I'm like, okay. I'm like, so I'm a warlock? And it's like, well, no, you're not a warlock by every definition, but you definitely practiced asceticism. And I'm like, so now you can see, so the thread that happened years ago, that fitness is a religion. And I'm like, tell me about this asceticism, because it's not new to me. I know exactly what it was getting at, and I could even plead guilty, but I kind of knew the truth in it, but I wanted a deep dive. And so what you're going to do with me now is go into a deep dive of asceticism. And I'm like, okay, asceticism, yeah, let's expand on that. And the Catholic Church had asceticism, and that got a little murky. I'm not gonna be able to give you a verbatim type story as to how did the Catholic Church asceticism, blah 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 blah. But the origin is that the word asceticism came from askēsis, a Greek word, and so these people in the desert are practicing a type of askēsis or training that came from Greek athletes. So the word asceticism is often linked to religious practices, but it comes from the gym and training. And so this is something that I found by accident because of bodybuilding. Because bodybuilding, when you take it seriously, needs you to be so accurate with your carbs and proteins and macros, your cardio, testosterone intake, everything is documented. It's regimen, it's ritual. You could say like great art is, or like those that engage in deep ethereal art. And so there I am looking into asceticism, and I'm like, okay, so give me the value of this word and how it correlates to what I do. I'm talking to Claude still. And so it's like 4 a.m. or something, but these thoughts, making these videos I've been inspired once again to make them, and it's stirring in my brain, like these words and the video I'm going to come up with next. And here it is, like these moments of inspiration. I'm giving you backstory as to where they start. It can start with electronic music that leads to this, and before you, there's asceticism, and then how that leads to that, and then boom, and then I'm like digging deep into my own protocol. And here I am getting to this moment where I hope that you're seeing this underlying thread. And so there's two words, ascetic and aesthetic. They sound similar, but they're different, because askēsis, which is what ascetic came from, and aesthesis is perception, what can be seen. There are two different Greek words, two different Greek roots, and there's exactly one arena on earth where they fuse: bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is aestheticism that produces an aesthetic. I'll say that again. Bodybuilding is an asceticism. So what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of question then, you see? So it actually was it the training, or was the training originally from religion? And we're starting to see if these are joined at the hip. Great athleticism and great religion, or great practice of religion, are joined at the hip. The denial becomes visible as form in bodybuilding. In other words, somebody that doesn't practice denial at all has no results. Nowhere else does restraint turn into something you can literally see. The mechanism. So, a little bit, I want to touch briefly on this concept, which is, years ago, there was a book called The Way of the Superior Man. And in that book, I'm reading that book, it's 2014 with my friends, and there I am with my friend Drew. We and him started reading it together. We read it as a group. And then some of that book got into the retention of the orgasm, reserving your orgasm, and then orgasming through the spine. And at that time, I was getting into meditation more. So this was an interesting time that I was like, damn, these sort of invitations to dig deeper, or way beyond the traditional aspect of meditation, like Taoism, meditation, being a yogi. These things were, this this study entered in my life in a very fertile stage where it took root. And while I was a Catholic or a Christian, born again Christian, I was raised Catholic, but I had come back to the Catholic Church around 2012 or so, slowly, very slowly. I had meditation as my sort of boat or the bridge to get there. And that's where I entered this conversation of denial of like the pleasure of sort of whatever that is. It could be thirst traps. It could be, if you're in a relationship, it could be checking out women that it's just temptation. It's almost like lust. It's not going to serve you. But deeper than that still, over the course of years now it's like, okay, there's pleasure in the denial. And I think and not only is there pleasure in the denial, but the denial leads to more power, more containment. The concept of the hunger command protocol is to command one's hunger. It could be sexual hunger, physical hunger, ambition. To command one's hunger is the key of the hunger command protocol. And the pyramid is designed to tap into dialing in all of the hungers. So that's the key, is to refuse an appetite. When you refuse an appetite, its energy concentrates, and then it can be aimed to a higher purpose. There's 5 levers, 1 machine. You could say controlling the appetite, or fasting commands the mouth. Continence commands desire. Silence commands the tongue. Vigils command sleep. And solitude commands the need for approval. Different appetites, one skill. So again, that's why it's called the hunger command protocol. Not to kill the hunger, because without hunger you cannot achieve anything. Not obey it, because now you're a slave to your hunger. You have to command it. The hunger is the horsepower. Command decides where it drives. And as we were saying, with fitness, you have to, in order to get results, it's almost like a receipt of how much you're actually in process, how much you're actually denying yourself of these worldly pleasures, these easy pleasures. Every junk food that you refuse, every rep you didn't skip, it's written in a way that everyone can read it. So is every time that you gave into temptation, whether it was a thirst trap or adult entertainment. You get the idea. So what's interesting is that no matter what I've practiced, is that I think that there was a time in my life I know there was a time in my life where I was somewhat agnostic, and I was struggling with my belief in God, or maybe I just wanted to give in to pleasure, or a combination of being modern and challenging God, and who knows, there's so many reasons people become agnostic or atheist or rebel against the church. Sometimes the church deserves to be rebelled against, even, one could say. But through all of these things, I've come back to the church. I've come back to, I don't even go to the physical church, to be honest with you. I quote, should. I value it quite a bit, of meditating or spending time in solitude on Sunday and just being in the presence of God, and finding that charges me more than going to a physical place called church. That's not for me to tell you to do that. I think that you should go where you feel that connection with God. And I mean that in the most sincere way, what serves you to get closer to God. Only you know that. Interestingly enough, though, asceticism itself cannot be the main point. The body is an instrument, not the enemy. If your discipline is damaging your instrument, it stops being training and becomes punishment. And punishment builds nothing. In other words, these concepts are not to invite someone to say, like, oh, I'm going to deny myself food, I'm going to deny myself friends. That's going way too far. And it's almost like lacking prudence and conviction, or a type of consciousness to make better decisions within ourselves. This is the line between you and the punishment. Fasting serves a machine, starving wrecks it. Vigil sharpens the will, sleep wrecks the blood. So everything has a dose. Aim high, not damage. The saints took ascēsis and made it a path to God. I took the same practice and made it a path to command. The same discipline, same desert, and the only difference is mine has a squat rack in it. Anyway, I'd love to work with you if you want to know more on how to make your fitness a religious practice, or your religious practice extended to your fitness, however you want to see it. We can start with something simple like ordering your labs, and I could read those with you as a trainer, as a coach, give you my sincere feedback based on my certifications and my practical applications for optimal health. And then if you are interested in continuing to work with me, you can actually take the $300 or $299 and apply it to the bigger program, the Hunger Command Protocol. There's absolutely no need to commit right out the gate, just to see if we work well together, if you like where we're headed. The link below to see my school and the Hunger Command Protocol is there. It's currently free, but I'm picking up the price to minimum of $47 soon, and then that's just for the entry point, but to get part of the full command protocol, that's a little bit more in an investment. I'm Jacob Adams. Blood first, everything else in order. Bye for now.